Welcome to A4No, B4Yes.
All right, welcome to A4No, B4Yes podcast, everybody. On last episode, we had dived into the deep end and finished up the water temple. We helped Morpha find the mitochondria, and we saw Rudo become one of the sages. This episode, we have the Shadow Temple planned for you, as well as we're going into the bottom of the well in Kakariko Village. My name's Tony, and my co-hosts.
I'm Ryan Fonzie.
And I'm Cameron Hagee.
And let's get this started.
All right. So, like you were saying before we finished the water temple, real quick, did either of you guys ever go back to being a kid before you got this far?
No.
Like this playthrough, I guess?
Yes, I didn't actually go to Lon Lon Ranch at all until I already became an adult, so I had to go back and do the Lon Lon Ranch stuff as a kid after becoming an adult in order to get Epona.
Gotcha.
Other than that, though, no.
Okay. Cool. Because there's a few cutscenes here, and like I feel like the order in which they go, it can be weirdly scrambled. I know once you finish the water temple, if you go back to Kakariko, I think you can get the bongo busting out the well cutscene.
Yep. And
that's like without ever going back to the Temple of Time. But if you do go back to the Temple of Time at any point now that, I mean, since the Forest Temple, I believe, you can get a cutscene where Sheik tells you about all the different places you're going to go. And she, they give you the Prelude of Light, right? Like which, I just wanted to talk about it because we hadn't like gone over it as a song. We talk about what all these different songs are. A prelude, I mean, is exactly what it sounds like. It's just an introductory piece of music. So the Prelude of Light is, I mean, it really doesn't say anything about the Temple of Time, I don't think, or the light temple that exists inside of it. It's just like kind of like a precursor to anything else. It's the Prelude of Light, because it's not really a temple or anything, but it is another song, so I just figured we would mention it. But yeah, other than that, I think talking about that bongo busting out the well scene, it's pretty cool.
I would say,
like,
in my opinion, the Prelude of Light would take you to the Temple of Time because the Master Sword has been like waiting there the entire time. And the Master Sword is like light itself, I guess. It just needs something to wield it. So before the power of the Master Sword can be unleashed and bring light to the world, it just has to slumber until it's found. So it's kind of like the prelude to, whenever this actually comes out, we gonna be going somewhere. But until then, it's kind of like the prelude to light. That's what I would get into. I didn't really think about it much until you brought it up, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think light has such a big meaning in this game that it could be that, and it could be something much bigger. But I'll get into that when we get to the temple, I think, just to try to frame it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I mean, aside from that, when we go back to Kakariko, I mean, I guess I don't even know if the game tells you to go back to Kakariko, but if you do, what you'll find as an adult anyway is that there's a building that's been basically lit on fire, and there's no explanation for that. And later on you can come back and there's not even like burn marks on the roof or anything where all the fire was. Some of the NPCs will make comments about how they had to work together to put it out. But you also run into Sheik, who is standing by the well and like tells Link to get back kind of ominously. And then, you see just this shadow emerge from the well and basically just manhandles you and Sheik.
The top of the well, like the wooden piece, just gets blasted 60, 70 feet up and smashes and gets destroyed on the ground. That was in the 3DS version.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember like the differences. I've actually watched both cutscenes recently because I started playing on the 3DS again too. But yeah, I think the 3DS version does a really cool job of like making this a little more
fleshed out.
Yeah, fleshed out. I was gonna say like tactile. I feel like that's not maybe the right term. It's like when you can actually like it.
It's more animated.
Yeah, I don't have the word right now. It'll come to me at some point. It's fine. So I think you get the actual you can get the song, you get the Nocturne of Shadow. Like Sheik after this cutscene comes in like you basically Link gets knocked out and gets woken back up by Sheik. Who I think explains the situation about Impa going to basically try to reseal this creature that escaped from the bottom of the well. And then he gives you the not the prelude. He gives you the Nocturne of Shadow, right?
Yeah.
It says, "This is the melody that will draw you into the infinite darkness that absorbs even time. Listen to this, the Nocturne of Shadow." That explanation doesn't do anything for me. It sounds like he's describing a black hole, as if that's where we're headed. Like it's infinite darkness that absorbs even time. Like I know that time like appears to almost stop near a black hole.
I have heard of that as well.
But I don't know enough of the science or enough of how that works to even get into it in terms of this game. Also,
yeah, no, not at all.
There's no black hole in this game, so it's very confusing. What I will say is that a nocturne is a short composition. Basically, it's suggestive of night. Usually, it's a piano piece, and that's like according to just this quick Google search. It says it can be like of a romantic or dreamy character suggestive of night. I don't know exactly what that means, but basically like, it's Nocturne of Shadow. Shadow is also kind of suggestive of night. There's a few like meanings of shadow. Shadow actually has like the word shadow can actually mean a lot of things. The most obvious is, like in relationship to light, like it, is like something that gets cast by an object that, light hits and gets stopped by or whatever, it's cast a shadow on the other side of it. But it also can mean like a source of gloom or unhappiness, like, like a shadow comes over you and like you're,
yeah.
It can mean a state of ignominy or obscurity. Or it could also mean an attenuated form or vestigial remnant, which is kind of like, I feel like how you might describe like a ghost or something, but basically like it's like a piece of something that is like either thinned out or made lesser or is like remaining afterwards. It's like a, like a piece kind of hanging off of whatever the main body was.
Yeah, but the remnants.
Yeah, so there's a lot of meanings that you could like kind of look at for this. I guess the biggest challenge I run into for this section of the game is that it's kind of run and described like the whole area, right? It's like it's used to be the Sheikah village. Like this all happens within Kakariko. And a lot of what we're seeing is attached to that history without actually being able to see what that history was. And I think like as far as in terms of being like a vestigial remnant, I mean, it's kind of part of what this, I feel like it's the shadow of like what the Sheikah tribe was. And so like a lot of this I find is attached to that, but I mean, yeah, it's tricky to think about. I'm not going to lie. So for this episode, I don't have a very strong overall theory of what is happening or what Link is learning or how we're growing. What I do have is some details that I've picked up about what I think they're trying to get at in terms of what has happened in the history of the game. And that's, there's definitely talking points, but this is like one of the most mysterious chapters, I think.
As I went through it, sort of got the theme of death in the sense that the last time we got accustomed to death was at the very beginning of the game with the Great Deku Tree. It was the first time Link had, in at least our eyes, seen death. And now we are getting back to Link as he is getting into this sort of death part of the game with shadows, and I don't want to go too much into it before we actually get to the main places we're going to, but I'll talk more about it later.
Yeah. So some of the hints that we have, obviously the top of the well blew off the top of the well. You know, that's where the monster came out of. I think Sheik might have even said something about having to like handle that. But there were a few other, like, I think if you were to actually head to the Shadow Temple and get inside, the temple itself will give you a hint before you even get through the first like real gateway, and basically say that, you know, the shadow will only yield to one who holds the Eye of Truth or something like that.
Yeah.
So what we'll realize real quickly is that this is like our first real encounter with hidden doorways, like invisible walls, or I guess visible walls that don't actually exist. I don't know. It's like trick walls, right?
Yeah. They don't have collision.
Right. And so I mean, it's a hint of this Eye of Truth. Now there's actually a character in Kakariko Village who gives a little history lesson if you talk to them, and says a long time ago, you know, there was a man who lived in this village who they said had an eye who could see the truth. Usually you have to train your mind's eye strenuously to actually see the truth, but this fellow, they said he had a different way of doing things. His house stood where the well is now. Kind of hinting at this well. But if you've never done, like, I know we talked about getting the Song of Storms, which actually drains the well. And if you don't do this, you can't get down there, right? So like, but it's kind of that another hint towards this Eye of Truth, or this eye that can see the truth. So what we need to do is actually, if we want to get the Lens of Truth, which, you know, you really do want to get the Lens of Truth, you have to go back to being a child again. Which is why I was talking about going back to the Temple of Time. Like for me, sometimes this is the first time I actually go back to the Temple of Time. So it can, it's like, I don't know, it's like the first time making that trip.
Yeah, it's the first time that you're forced to go back to a child as an adult. Yeah. You never really need to if you explored as a child and did pretty much everything. This would be the first time that you absolutely need to. And isn't it such a strange well? This well is somehow connected to the windmill that drains it when it speeds up. And the people also felt, I mean, who was the one who decided to lock the giant evil monstrosity like at the bottom of the water source?
Impa?
Was it just the Sheikah, like, all themselves a long time ago? But either way, they're drinking out of, like, where this thing is sealed. And it's, like, the essence of evil. That's just an odd place, in my opinion, for them to want to seal something.
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning is behind that. I think, I don't know. Like, it kind of goes into that dark history stuff. But, like, you know, it's a little bit ominous to say that this man has a different way of doing things, because that could just be like, oh, he didn't have like his actual eyes that could see it. He had this lens that could see it. But there's also a weird implication of like he had a different way of discovering the truth, which may have been through torture, based on what we find at the bottom of the well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
He may have had himself a dungeon in his basement or something before this well was put in. Yeah, it's a big maybe. It's one of those things that, like I said, like I can't say for sure because the game doesn't give quite enough information. But clearly somebody used this as a dungeon. Like if it wasn't him, like it was.
This is not part of the normal construction for a well, for sure.
Right, for sure. Like you don't get more water by having a crucifix in the bottom of the well, but but that's a little bit of a spoiler for later in the episode.
Or having giant chambers with undead hands in them.
Right. So we may remember that we learned from the guy in the windmill the song that he hates. Like he teaches it to us as an adult, so when we go back as a kid to unlock the bottom of the well, we go and we play that song for him. And And I say for him, and
you ruin his life from this moment forward to get to the bottom of this well. This guy's miserable forward.
This on its own is a really weird scene, because you speed up the well, you make it rain indoors, and the well like inexplicably empties. Now I don't know if there's like a gate that relies on the windmill being at a certain speed that lets the water out. There's an idea that I had about this where it kind of seems like, he loves things that go round and round. You make it rain, but also water comes out of the well. I almost wonder if like the rain that you create is actually like drawn from the well to make the rain. And in a sense, this man's life is ruined because basically he has to take on the consequence of you messing with the natural order of things. And that's really stretching, but
But we got that long shot now, so that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. We do have the long shot now. We can make things like that. But it does kind of seem like, why else would this windmill just speed up inexplicably? Like, that's like the water cycle trying to catch up with itself. And this poor dude is like, he's carrying the burdens of us just using magic all the time. But I don't know. Just a thought.
So what I'm thinking that this is video game logic, and the well just happened to be a place that they put there, the windmill, and it was around the time to do the well. And I think that the guy there just has OCD, and so when he sees the windmill moving faster, he himself just has to move faster because he feels really awkward keeping at a slow pace while the windmill's going crazy, so he's just like driving himself crazy all the time, having to keep up with this pace that he doesn't want to, but feels like he needs to.
Do you think having a rainstorm inside the well speeds it up? Because
I don't even know I feel like that rainstorm isn't even intentional in the building. Can you go in other buildings, play the Song of Storms, and have it start raining in the building?
Yes.
Is this exclusive to the windmill?
You can make it rain pretty much anywhere you want, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I feel like this isn't directly, the raining in the windmill I don't feel like is linked at all to the well going down. I feel like that's just the trigger that they happen to put there to activate it. I don't think there's any real science or way. I mean, maybe you could theoretically come up with some kind of rig that would do that, but I don't think that the village went crazy with their engineering skills to come up with that so that they could be like, woo, windmill go fast, well go, wow, bye-bye.
Yeah, there's no...
It doesn't make any sense. I feel like it's just a trigger they put there.
Right.
And then that guy just goes nuts.
There's some inexplicable link between the two structures. I mean, the windmill, honestly, windmills can be used to draw water from a well. Like that is an applicable use. But normally it would draw it up into the actual well itself, not draw it out of the well, like into the ground or wherever the water goes. So that part doesn't really compute, but it is what it is.
Okay, so I got this idea, right? So this guy used to live on where this well is, and he had a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
The well eventually became connected to the windmill, but that's because the connection existed from the time back when this guy had the dungeon. He was also the master of the windmill, and he owned the windmill. And when he wanted to let the howls of his victims out, he sped up the windmill, which opened up some kind of contraption to scare people off of his land so they thought it was haunted to protect his things.
We gotta howl back up.
And then a bunch of kids and their dog came in and discovered the whole thing after he dressed up like a re-dead and cursed that dog.
Okay, this is
It's funny you mentioned that because the windmill is in the OG version of the game before it was released on the N64. The windmill, the Shadow Temple, and the well were all connected, as well as Dompe's grave was actually part of the dungeon, and they later scrapped that idea. That's why when you go into the windmill at a certain point in the game after Dompe's grave, you see the question marks, because it was actually all supposed to be connected in the original game, and they separated everything.
I never heard that before. That's interesting.
That's pretty wild.
I don't know
it makes sense.
which like ones were connected, but if it was like the windmill and the well with Dompe's grave, or if it was Dompe's grave and the Shadow Temple, but they were supposed to be connected at some point, and so that's probably why the windmill is connected to Dompe's grave, which is connected to the well in association with the windmill, which is also connected.
Places, except maybe the windmill.
I mean, the phonogram man's pretty creepy himself.
He just likes things to go around, man. It ain't creepy. Nah, I mean, it's circle of life, right? I don't know.
Have you seen his face when you're an adult? When he's mad, he looks like the murderer.
Bruh, he's been tortured for 7 years. How do you think you would feel? This poor guy.
He might be making some crazy eyes too at that point.
This man has seen hell, and he is still spinning.
So we.
How does he get food?
He has it delivered. Uber Eats.
How do any of the NPCs get food except for the guys that are in the house waiting for food to be made, which is never actually made, so they don't even eat?
Hyrule Dash.
Hyrule Dash. That's what the dude running around in Hyrule Field is doing.
Yeah, he's got the bunny ears.
He's the entrepreneur. Yeah. Where's the one place that actually makes food, though?
Lana Ranch. He's the central hub, man. He's bringing everybody milk and, more milk.
Bread.
Milk and chicken and burgers, I guess.
I mean, if those cows stop putting out, you know.
I mean, you have to imagine that you have to expand the scale of it a little bit to work in all the people of the land, but I like it. Hyrule Dash.
So we get into this well, and I think there's a spirit on the way in that basically tells you to seek the Eye of Truth. And here's the thing. Seeking the Eye of Truth used to be a whole big thing where I would go through this well and find all the rooms and figure out where everything is, and then somehow randomly happen upon the Lens of Truth. But usually, like, there was a map and a compass to find all kinds of stuff, right? Like this thing is like as long as you want it to be, pretty much.
Yeah, it's not a full-blown temple, but it's like a mini dungeon.
Yeah, some notable features are a big crucifix in the middle. It's like a big torture device that's in the shape of an X. This is like a medieval tool for torturing, and I don't know if they changed it in the 3DS version, but it used to have blood underneath it. Chains hanging from the two arm posts, which are the taller posts typically, just traditionally speaking. And yeah, this kind of device was used to basically string people up, and I mean, at that point, it is whatever you needed to do.
Son of a gun! I think they did censor it.
Yeah. Which would mean that something, I mean, unless you assume that it's dried, something happened either recently or, I mean, I don't think something was supposed to have happened recently. I think it's supposed to have happened a long time ago, but this is like our first step into dark history land, but there's really not a lot of explanation for this one. Like the bottom of the well, I feel like is even more mysterious than the actual Shadow Temple itself. Because it's separated, like Anthony was saying, like they took everything and broke it apart. If it had still been connected, I feel like it would have made a little more sense.
Yeah. Another thing that makes the well magical is, how is there a green bubble that's on fire when like 5 minutes ago it would have been underwater for like 100 years?
I don't know if the water from the well, I don't know if they had some kind of reasoning there. Maybe water can't go through invisible walls, you know, like maybe that's the limitation. Like maybe the bottom of the well, maybe the well itself held the water, but the bottom of the well was always just a big bubble cavern. But I don't know. I mean, there is water that you have to drain in the bottom of the well. Even after you get in, like you play the royal family's like lullaby for whatever reason. And that makes even more water go away so that you can explore deeper. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, aside from the big cross in the middle of everything, there's also some jail cells, some what appear to be like crypts, and like some wall
and a pile of acid at the very bottom.
Yeah, pile of acid, some re-deads. Oh, and the ability to skip the entire temple. So if you know where the Lens of Truth is, you can just kind of run in, play the song to drain the water, go through like one hole, go through a door, fight the mini boss, get your Eye of Truth, and leave. And the whole thing will take you maybe 10 minutes to do. Whereas if you don't know where you're going, you'll usually circle around, fall through the floor, you know. I mean, you find some nice stuff. There's treasure all over the place, but it is like a mini dungeon. Otherwise, like once you learn the layout, it's practically skippable though.
Oh yeah, it's 100% skippable outside of exactly what you said.
Yeah.
But you find golden sculptulas, a bunch of rupees, some arrows.
Yeah, Bombachus, man.
Or
down here
Bombachus, yeah.
Yeah, I find
so
arrows
not bad.
Too, but yeah, no, it's. I mean, you definitely like you explore it, you get rewarded for exploring it. Like it's not bad to do.
And there's also small keys involved if you're
yeah.
If you're really going for it.
You don't need any of them, but they're there.
Which I think is interesting because it's the only thing as a kid that has small keys outside of, well, somewhere we haven't gotten yet.
Right. Like this is our first encounter as young Link with a small key.
And I don't even know if young Link even gets a small key in that thing anyways. They might have all been on the adult part.
Huh.
Either way, these are the first small keys we get as a kid. So they're important.
Right. So we're exploring this crazy random like dungeon of sorts that we presume either was owned by the Sheikah, I guess, or by the man who used to live on that spot, and we don't know if that man was a Sheikah or not. And we get to the mini boss eventually, which is our first encounter with a dead hand. Anthony, are you wanting to talk about the dead hand at all?
Well, I have a strategy of how to beat him.
Okay.
I have his description. His description is simply nightmare fuel. That's all.
Okay.
You will come into the room and there's like 4 hands, 5 guys.
There's
I think it was
4
5.
hands in this one, yeah.
4. Yeah. And basically the strategy to beating him doesn't come into play until after you've already beaten this one. Because guess what, everybody? There's 2 of them later on. But this one, basically you just get grabbed by his hands. And then as you get grabbed, he'll like try to come out. He like emerges from the ground in like a dirt explosion of whatever the dirt's made out of. I don't even want to know. And then you just sort of whack away, try to free yourself, and then like his like head bobs down sometimes because he's the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah.
For a Zelda game.
In the old game, like I say the old game, in pre 3DS version, his head like almost like ratchets its way down. Like it takes forever. Like he comes up to you and then he like slowly lowers it. And once he lowers it, you can hit him a bunch of times and do a lot of damage. In the 3DS version, he just kind of like whips it down.
Nah, he doesn't whip it down. It still felt slow in the 3DS version. It's like a 1.5, 2-second animation.
When I played it, it seemed like he lowered it a lot faster than he used to. It used to be like silly slow. In this one, it seemed like he kind of knew how to lower his head a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess without the reference of how super slow it was, it felt slow still. So I guess they did a good job of speeding it up, but still making it feel slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the same hand.
And when
By
he's
the
walking
way-
at you, it's the weirdest thing. He's like got his hands out, like doing the jig, and then his whole head and not even looking at you is just all up at the ceiling as he's just slowly waddling at you.
Yeah.
It's disconcerting, but it's not necessarily like horrific. It's almost funny.
It's just
Until his
like,
head comes down and you're like, ugh.
What is he though? You know,
Right.
like
Did this guy used to be human? Like,
he has like what's. Is it like a Diglett thing? Like, what's underneath, you know?
I did not think of
The
that.
world's ugliest Diglett.
It's like, you know, he's got some,
He's so
he's got some
ugly he
body
came out of
underneath
the
there.
ground.
He's got some nasty bruises. He looks like he's like melted.
He honestly reminds me, if you guys ever heard of an ancient Japanese demon called Wairu.
Wairu? No, I haven't heard of that.
No, I don't know of it.
So Wairu is an ancient Japanese demon that sort of is like a giant sentient. Well, I don't want to use the word sentient, but it's sort of like a long pig worm, and half of his body will be underground, and then the other half is above ground, where he has a giant mouth and an eyeball, and has multiple hands coming out of the ground with claws.
How do you spell Wairu?
Wairu.
Okay, that's not okay. It's not working for me. So I was trying to look it up.
And he's like got a portal underground that like you can't hit his body until you like surface him somehow, and then you see the rest of his body, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Ew.
Did you find it?
I can see how you could draw conclusions. No, just hearing the description. I'll try to look it up, though.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find anything.
Oh, sorry, it's a Waira.
Waira?
Waira, yeah, it's a Waira. Press Waira. My bad. It's been a while since I looked it up.
Oh, okay.
Waira?
It's all good. I don't know enough about the history of this thing.
It's just an ancient demon that half of its body's in the ground, and then it's got like hands and stuff that like come out. It's got like a weird humanoid face, but it's like the body of a worm. And honestly, it's what reminded me of this guy, the Dead Hand.
Gotcha.
Its face is similarly grotesque, but with different prominent features.
Yeah, but I think it may possibly be like the inspiration of it.
Gotcha.
With the way the body is shaped.
Yeah.
It's Ganondorf's Waira.
There is a way. I know that you said like the strategy for beating it doesn't come until after, because with the Eye of Truth, you can see its shadow.
Yes.
You can draw it out without getting caught by a hand. If you bomb the areas of the room where the shadow's most likely to be, you can eventually like hit him just kind of randomly, and he will come out.
You can do guesswork.
Yeah, like his shadow still exists in the room even though you can't see it. The only reason I know that is because I tried that last time I was there. I was like, like when I have the lens, I can do this thing. Let me see if I can do it without actually knowing where he is. This one, he's normally either like exactly in the midpoint of his arms, like of two of his arms. And that means like either along one of the sides or like right in the middle of the room, or he'll be like at one of his arms. So there's like, I don't know, 9 different positions that he could be in. But the bomb can actually hit like 2 or 3 of them at a time if it's placed right. So it's not too bad to do it that way. But it's not as easy. You get caught by an arm. The arms don't actually do damage. They just keep you stuck. Presumably so that this monster can come and like eat you while you're stuck.
Yeah.
That
would be
like
the idea.
Dirt explosion of poop or whatever's in that room. Ugh.
Desert Storm.
Yeah, I was gonna say Desert Storm. Oh, Rogue Galaxy. So I was gonna say this is the same hand. If you guys played Majora's Mask, that's in the toilet in Anja's Inn in Clocktown, and it's the same hand that wants toilet paper because for some odd reason, I don't know.
And then you give it to him, and he goes,
"Yeah." Yeah, same hand. It's also the Dead Hand model.
Oh man,
that's reaching out of the toilet.
Well, that's fun.
He's a friendly guy in that game.
I hate hands in toilets, man. It's not a good image.
Yeah.
After you see the hand in the toilet, then you can go get a bedtime story by Grandma.
Okay.
That is not equal payment.
No. You get nightmare fuel and then it's bedtime. It's not good.
As somebody that worked as a janitor cleaning toilets at one point, I agree. Hands and toilets just shouldn't really go together.
Gotcha. So we get the Lens of Truth, and you might immediately recognize that the Lens of Truth is in the shape of the Sheikah symbol. It's like a eyeball with like eyelashes coming off the top, and then like a single tear coming down off the bottom that is the handle of the lens. And it's in the same shape as the symbol we've seen like Impa wear. We've seen it on all the Gossip Stones have this symbol on it. There's a book in the 3DS version of the game in the House of Skulltula that has this symbol on it. And it's actually on the doorway into the Shadow Temple as well, which would kind of once again indicate that this Shadow Temple was at some point used or run by the Sheikah. I am of the opinion that the Sheikah did not put this temple here, but we're just using it. And I don't have a great explanation for that for this episode. I'm saving that for later. But clearly they put their symbol on the door. And I mean, it's just past the graveyard that the Sheikah overwatch. In fact, you could argue that it's part of the graveyard that the Sheikah overwatch. And yeah, so like this is their town. Like this is, it's almost like, every other place we've been to has had a race associated with it that we're able to like actually interact with, talk to, learn about, figure out what their like traits are. This one, not so much. All we have is Impa and Sheik to go off of, and they're both mysterious ninja characters who like pop in every once in a while, but are for the most part absent. But what I will say is that if you look at the medallion that we get at the end of this, and if you look at the color scheme that they wear, going through our colors, we used to have red, blue, and green, and this is the first time we hit purple, which is not any of those three. You could say like, well, red and blue makes purple, so clearly there's some kind of mix of power and wisdom, which I think is actually fair because the Sheikah are like these really cool ninja people who seem to have a whole history and understanding of the world that you don't. But I don't think that's what their purpose actually is. Because the same thing could be said about the Gerudo, because they also kind of wear purple, but I don't think that their color scheme is purple. There's a lot to this. So I went a little bit deep with this one. So I'll go in for just a second here, and then we can kind of come back out of it, because I don't think I have the answer to what purple is. I guess I'll just put my cards on the table, right? I did some color theory research, and the reason I did that is because we have RGB, which is like the colors that you'd control on like a computer screen, right? Not your actual primary colors, which would have been red, blue, and yellow. And when I did the research, what I found was that your primary colors aren't actually like, okay, so the ones you learn in art school and like as a kid in elementary school, whatever, like it's red, blue, and yellow. Like that's your, you can't make those colors with anything else, and you mix them to make every other color, right? Like that's why they're called your primaries. Turns out like if you look to your printer, you'll get a better idea of what your primaries are, with the magenta, cyan, and yellow. Because you can actually mix those colors to get red and blue, which is wild to me. Like I didn't realize that was an actual thing, but it's a thing. That being said, that wasn't useful. Like when I realized that information, it didn't help me learn anything. I was like, oh, like so red. So basically, there's a whole like additive color mixing versus subtractive color mixing. So when you have a pigment, you're actually removing colors from what can bounce off of it. But when you're shining light, it's like the light actually mixes together to make different colors in a different direction, which is why we use red, green, and blue for screens, because it's actually shining light like directly at us. So that, I think that's why they picked those colors as the main three of the game, because, like they're probably the easiest ones to show on screen. They show up really well. Like they're our most powerful, like light divisions, right? And so what I ended up landing on was that I think that what the color scheme in this game is actually based off of, because we actually end up with all the colors of the rainbow, aside from maybe indigo, right? Like we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And the Sheikah are the purple. And so what I figured out, or at least what I think I figured out, is that what they did was they basically took the color wheel that we learned in school, like how there's complementary color, like red and green are complementary colors, orange and blue are complementary colors, and yellow and purple are complementary colors. And they use those to show dichotomies of character traits. So like red and blue being power and courage, like, you know, they show the Kokiri who've been trapped in, like, they're basically in their houses because there's all these big monsters outside. But if you talk to any of them, none of them seem scared of the big monsters outside. They're just like, oh yeah, we can't really go outside because these monsters, whatever. Maybe one day Link will come back. I don't know. Yeah, sorry I went to the woods. No biggie. Like, they're all just kind of chilling. Like, they don't have the power to do anything, but they're also not really like afraid for their lives. They're just chilling in their houses like, oh yeah, monsters outside, whatevs. And the opposite side, you have the Gorons who are powerful, right? But they're all like trapped in jail cells and they're like shaking. So they're scared out of their mind. But at the same time, they are a powerful species, right? Like, and the story of those two areas kind of tells, you know, like this, there's a lot about balance in this game and having a balanced nature, having balanced character traits. Like they're kind of getting at like, okay, if you have too much courage, not enough power, you really can't do much. If you have too much power, not enough courage, you're also not going to do much. And not because you can't, but because you choose not to, right? Like, that's probably one of the stronger evidences I have of this. That being said, what is purple and what does it go against and what's the dichotomy there, right? Sorry, I'm going forever on this, guys. This is like part of the building, and I think it's going to help with the next chapter as well to not have to go through all this again. But so like
you good?
So we hit the Zora temple, or like, yeah, the Zora's domain and the water temple, which is our blue, and the dichotomy of that would actually be orange. Orange is the color of the Gerudo tribe, which is why I can't get too far into it. But what I say is, you know, blue is wisdom. Then there's an implication about the Gerudo tribe that is a little bit mean, but at the same time, like, I think when we get there, you'll see that they actually, like, they have their own character trait that I think is also very valuable. So like the split between them is actually really cool. I think it works really well for this argument, but that'll be next episode. So then purple and yellow. Yellow is actually the Temple of Light where Rauru is. So we have both of these colors already. The problem is we don't have a lot of information. Even Rauru and like the Temple of Light, it hasn't been presented in a way that like fully fleshes it out. The best I was able to come up with for these two is, you know, we're after, like, we're on a path trying to bring truth and justice to the world, right? And I think that these two areas represent truth and justice, and it would be really obvious to say, okay, well, light truth makes sense. Purple justice, I don't know, because we've already talked about how Impa is trying to create a village of truth and just, like, she's doing everything like in Kakariko Village. But I think it kind of plays out better if you remember that the Sheikah tribe is loyal to the royal family and has been their attendants. And whenever you see one of them, and they're like a warrior tribe, right? So like, I get the feeling like the Sheikah tribe, I mean, aside from the guards of Hyrule Castle, were actually responsible for administering some kind of justice for the royal family. Like they were probably like the secret service of the royal family. Like they were probably the bodyguards. They were probably like, you know, I mean, obviously Impa's Zelda's bodyguard, so I think that's proof enough for that. And I think that I think that they're a part of this dark history that we're going through because they were a part of this thing. Like because they were, partly because they were this justice administering group. But like I said, it's that dichotomy. So if they have the justice, that means they'd be lacking in truth. But it's weird because we just got the lens of truth. So it's very confusing. Like, I don't know entirely what's going on. Like why these two are mixed and as obscure as they are. I think a big part of it is because light and shadow are like kind of bound together. Like you can't have shadow without light, right? So like, so there's a lot. You get where I'm at with this. Like, this is like stuff that I've been like thinking about for a while, and I'm like, I just get stuck in so many areas of this thought process. But I'm pretty sure this is what they're getting at. I mean, you could argue, okay, the lens of truth was under the well, so maybe the truth was buried, and that's why we're just learning about this dark history now. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Absolute darkness without any light, or shadow without light, I think can exist. Like, to have absolutely no light, there would be nothing but shadow left. It would just be all-encompassing, so I don't know if you would necessarily call it that at that point.
Right.
But with light, you're always going to have shadow. If you have anything around, there's always going to be shadow when you have light.
Yeah, true.
I lost my train of thought.
I wonder if did I put Anthony to sleep, or is he still here?
I can't think of a good thing to add to that. I mean, I agreed with everything that you did say about, because when you think of shadow and the absence of light, what's the first color that comes to our mind? Black, right?
Yeah.
But in the medallion being purple, and I sort of feel like this is more, it's not truth and justice necessarily together. I want to say that it's just the truth. And I'd like to think that justice comes after, if you know what I mean by what I'm saying that. And so I feel like purple being the truth, all of the Sheikah, their clothing is basically like a light bluish purple type color. So this is sort of uncovering the truth behind the dark history of Hyrule. Like, what has gone on? Why is there no more Sheikah left? Why do these temples exist here? Like, what is the main reasoning of the well? What is the main reasoning of the Shadow Temple? No one knew these things were ever here, right? Aside from the Sheikah. Like, you as Link have to discover these things on your own. And I think the reason that we return back to a kid for a short bit is the sole reason of Link, like, getting accustomed to death one more time, I should say. And I was going to save that for the Shadow Temple, but...
Getting accustomed to death one more time as a kid?
So I feel like the game goes by trials, right? Like, each dungeon and each temple in Link's journey has been a sort of a different trial. And I feel like it's set in place like that like they made you go back to being a kid for one last trial, basically, as a kid, if you want to look at it like that. And this could sort of just be like the trial of truth in a way. Like, if you actually want to dive deep into the story of Zelda and the lore of the well, it's honestly that I'm losing my track of thought here, but if you understand what I'm saying,
I get what you mean, because like he goes and he gets his first experiences of courage, power, and wisdom as a kid, and then comes forward and gets courage, power, and wisdom again as an adult, and gets the adult versions. And I think through that process, he becomes a more confident, powerful, and self-aware person. And so now he's ready to kind of take on Shadow. Like, if you didn't have those, like, those I guess traits and convictions about yourself, like, you might get lost in the Shadow Temple. Like, you might either like lose your way or just not.
You won't be smart enough. You won't be strong enough.
There'd be a lot of hangups, especially if this is uncovering the truth of somebody that you have always seen as an ally, and like suddenly there's like dark history, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be like I thought we were all on the same team. Like, what is all this garbage? Like, like, I don't know. He has to be able to see things for what they are, right? Like, he has to be able to, I guess, to have all these other character traits before he's ready. I guess I mean, going back to what I was, just kind of going back, like one of the biggest arguments that I think kind of matches what I was sharing with that huge color theory exposition. I just asked myself the question, okay, like what is justice without truth, right? Kind of tyrannical if you think about it. Like if you're administering justice, but you're not really caring about the truth, then you're probably just punishing people for things they did or didn't do based on what you think, you know? What is truth without justice? It's like a knowledge of what's going on, but without any kind of motivation to do anything about it. And I don't think that either of our characters match that, but I think it's more likely that Rauru is the truth guy because he just spends this whole time in the temple telling you what's what. And like, you know, there's a link between him and Kabora Gabora, and Kabora Gabora just spends his time flying around telling you what's what. And he's always right, but he doesn't really do anything himself to help, you know? So that's why I feel like he's more so the truth character and not so much justice, because he doesn't really seem to care too much about justice. He's just like, well, this is the truth. Like, this is what's going on. If you want to do X, you got to do Y, you know, what have you. Whereas I feel like the Sheikah have been loyal to the royal family. And if we know anything about the royal family, it's like, they're not always the best at like managing things the right way. You know, like I have a feeling like, especially if there was a war, that there's a chance that this dark history comes from an unquestioning loyalty that didn't always look at truth, but was always there to administer justice according to what the royal family wanted, you know? So that's why I feel like there's hints of both. Like they both have, but like I feel like the Sheikah are huge fans of the truth. That's why they always wear the truth symbol, and like, you know, they're always doing this. Like they want to be able to do justice the right way, and that's why they like truth. But I don't think that they always acted on truth. I think that they were more so loyal than they were honest about that, I guess.
The lens of truth, like looking like the Sheikah symbol, is almost like a projection that they don't want people to look at them in a way that would examine their truth. Like they would have a lot to hide because maybe they didn't follow that the right way. Like you said, they followed the royal family, who ended up making a lot of mistakes, and maybe a couple dungeons along the way with a lot of mistakes in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see, especially with them being connected to the Eye of Truth, and then that being like connected to the Shadow Temple, that they definitely could be connected to that and have, you know, a lot to hide. That they were seen kind of on the outside as this protector, this force for good that carried out the will of the royal family, who's always, you know, they're the top of the top. They're always doing the good thing, right, to the people of the kingdom, and that's what they think. So, but if you were to take that Eye of Truth and point it back at them, then maybe there would be something kind of like what you see in the Shadow Temple, hiding behind that positive exterior.
Yeah, for sure. And I think some of the imagery we
Skeletons
get
in the closet
really lends itself to that concept, in a way that's, you know, I mean, it's disturbing at times, but I think we're going to hit that at least a few times going through this temple. Before we get into the actual temple, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and that was just about the House of Skulltula. Like, I don't know why there's a Sheikah book in the House of Skulltula. At first, I would have thought maybe the Sheikah were trying to help in some way, you know, like maybe they were trying to say, okay, this is what your curse is. This is how it's handled. Like, we can help you with this or whatever. There's the question, okay, were the House of Skulltula family, like, were they Sheikah? I don't think so, because when they come back, they don't act like Sheikah. They don't look like Sheikah. And the other option is that perhaps the curse was given to them by the Sheikah, because there's nothing in the game to connect the curse to Ganondorf. Like, he didn't do that to them. Like, it says that they were cursed because of their greed, but it never says why. And being cursed because of your greed sounds like a twisted form of justice, you know? So I think that for me, the most interesting story here is that the Sheikah actually put that curse on them at some point. But it leads to even more confusion because like why was the House of Skulltula existing in the Sheikah village at the same time as the Sheikah? Like my understanding was that none of these people lived there before the like during the time of the Sheikah, like it wasn't opened up until afterwards. So there's some confusion there, but they were a very wealthy family, so maybe they put themselves there because it was the Sheikah village, like they wanted the extra protection. But I don't know. That's all speculative. Like I don't know if any of that's anything, but to me that's an interesting story. And kind of an interesting thing to think about.
They robbed the king and suffered the Sheikah wrath.
I guess. I don't know what the greed that they had really was, other than they were rich and probably maybe they weren't charitable with it. Maybe they were just always looking for more money. I don't know. Greed is greed, you know.
True.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of greed, there are two greedy things that we can do once we got actually just one greedy thing we can do once we have the Lens of Truth. You go into Castletown, since we're still a little baby kid, and we play the one game where you have to guess like which treasure chest is has the small key in it. I forgot actually where in Castletown it is. But yeah, you just use the Lens of Truth and you can see right through which treasure chest is the rupee and which one's the small key to continue on. And as you get to the end, you get a heart piece.
Yeah. That's
simple.
An interesting connection. But yes, it does make it very easy.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Yeah, you can cheat with that Lens of Truth. It's pretty great.
And before we get into the Shadow Temple, we missed one new creature that we hadn't talked about yet, which is actually also present in the Shadow Temple. So we might as well just talk about him now. And that is the Gibdo.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, they're basically re-deads that are just re-skinned as a mummy. There's no difference between re-deads and Gibdos, except I feel like the Gibdos make a different noise when they latch onto you, and they just go, and it's like...
It's just awkward.
It just makes you want to, like...
Can you not?
And then, like, speaking of, in the well, like, you know, when you're hunting for Skulltulas, there's a room where there's, like, 6 crypts. I'm pretty sure that was in the well.
Yeah, it's in the well, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot what the trigger is exactly for it, but you, like, get I think it's, like, a song. I think you play a song, maybe. And the Gibdo will, like, the crypt will open, and the Gibdo will, like, float up, like, he's just rising out of the grave, and then he'll just, like, plant his feet.
Yeah, if you just...
there's
Oh,
the torches, right.
I think there's some where if you just get close to them, that kind of happen. Like, the cover comes off, but then there's the room where you light the torches, and then they all come up at once. Or something like that.
No, the 3DS one, it was 1 lit torch and 5 unlit, and then every time you lit a torch, it would go into a little scene of it opening, and then you'd light the next one, it would go into the same scene of the next one opening. One of them had a small key, one of them had a Gibdo, one was empty, and I think 2 had keys.
Yeah, you're right. I think you can go into the middle of the room and Din's fire it, and then it has to go one by one according to the order they get lit.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Din's fire!
Ow.
It's funny. Din's fire is actually how we get into the Shadow Temple, too. Are we ready to go there?
Yeah, we are.
So we go into the Shadow Temple.
Yeah, you're going to want to go back and be an adult.
And we get to the room, and what do? We 1-800 Din's fire.
Yeah, this is like, it looks like some kind of, like, I don't know, some kind of ritual room or something. Like, there's just all these torches set up in a big circle. I don't know if, like, there was some kind of, like, way to light these that wasn't Din's fire back in the day.
Nah, I don't think there is.
You think it's just always been Din's fire?
Yeah, it's Din's fire.
The Sheikah were on real good terms with the Great Fairies, and they had that spell.
It's not symmetrical whatsoever. Like, these things are just placed so randomly all over, and there's, like, 20 of them. There's, like, you're not doing it with anything else. I don't even think fire arrows would do it fast enough.
Probably not.
Or they just had 20 Sheikah.
Well, I mean, for the sake of Link.
I might have one Sheikah per lamp. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't
think there's any other way that Link can open it.
Right. And there's writing all over the ground.
No, it's the only time
like
Din's fire is required.
yeah, this entryway is one of the only places where you really need it. I don't know. It's pretty cool. I like it. I don't know what the implications are. I don't know what the culture is. It just seems like this religious ritual of some kind to enter the temple.
It does have like an ominous vibe to it.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you bring an extra magic potion in this dungeon.
I've never needed an extra magic potion in this dungeon.
Nah. There's a lot of pots and enemies that drop magic powder. I never got below 3/4.
Oh, I just leave the lens on the whole time.
Oh,
nah.
Yeah, then you're going to want magic potion.
And if you're a stickler for your magic power, you can turn it on and off in about 3/4 to 1 second intervals, and it'll never actually use your magic power.
Yep.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Nobody got the button presses for that.
Yeah, you don't really need the lens that much. But yeah, so this temple is it's a journey. Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. It's dark.
You actually fight the mini boss pretty darn early on, honestly.
Yeah, I think there's like
if what you want
that I would consider a mini boss in this place. But
is this the only dungeon in the game where you get like the main weapon before you get the compass?
Yeah,
probably.
Because the compass was the last of the 3 big boxes, aside from the final boss key that you got, and that was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, you only have to go through 2 rooms to get the item in this dungeon.
Yeah, so you come up to like this big clock thing, and it tells you to turn I don't know if they call it a compass or a clock or what reference they give, but basically you have to turn this bird statue towards the skull of truth. Which I think is just a little bit overdoing it with the whole like of truth language. Because it's just the one skull that doesn't go away when you shine the lens of truth on it. There's a bunch of like illusory skulls. And when you do that, you unlock the door, but you can't actually get to the door without the sacred feet, right? Like there's a sign that says like only one with the sacred feet can cross the chasm of death or whatever. So we have to go find our sacred feet. Sorry, it's the Valley of the Dead is the actual term. But yeah. So we go into, I guess, the catacombs. Like the first thing we do is go into like this big like line of rooms that are all separated by illusion walls. And there's a couple different ways that go around. Like it's made, I think, to be confusing because it's like everything is like a big circle, and then like it's like circles connected to each other by walls you can't see through usually.
And there's walls on the inside and the outside.
Yeah. So you go through this. This is where you'll find your sacred feet. I think there's a few other rooms you can find stuff into. I don't know if the map is over here or something like that. There's some useful item for the dungeon.
Yeah, I think the map is, and then there's a couple small chests with like rupees and stuff hiding there.
Kind of Gibdo, I think.
Yeah. So this is where we fight the second dead hand. And this one has more hands than the other dead hand.
Yeah.
I think it's got like 6 maybe. But this is also one where you can use the lens of truth and find the shadow of the creature and draw it out with a bomb. I don't know what other items you can use to draw it out. I just know that the bomb works really well.
That's honestly probably a Deku Nut. Maybe it might stun it. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
I just use the bomb.
Just figure out things that can trigger it. But you don't have to get caught by any hands for this one because of that. So that's nice. It's never really been a hard boss. I think it's just been meant to be nightmare fuel,
It really is.
Yeah.
Scary to the kids.
It's the hand cracking.
The hand cracking. Release the hand cracking.
You realize how much noodling he could do?
He can do all the noodling.
I think this is also the area where there's a path to it's like it becomes a shortcut later on if you need it. But it's, there's like a sign that says like if you want to see a boat to the underworld or to the other world, come down this way. And it's basically there's an invisible hole in the ground. If you climb down, you can see a boat that we actually use later. But for now, you can only see it until you move a block that you can only move from the bottom. It's kind of cool. It looks a lot better in the 3DS version, I'm going to say. The original, it was like a big bird on the front of the boat. It looked really weird, and there's no great explanation for it. I don't know if the bird is another symbol that I don't understand from some other culture, but in the 3DS version, they kind of replaced it with a Grim Reaper wearing like a red hood.
Yeah.
Which I think probably makes more sense. It's like the ferryman.
Yeah.
The bird is sort of like a symbol of Hyrule in a way. Like, it's on the Hylian shield. It's on the gate as you're going to the castle. So they probably just were like, let's stick some imagery here. And that's what they went with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, the boat does seem to be a Hyrule royal family thing. So that makes sense.
And then I think they just changed it to death.
Yeah. So we can cross our Valley of the Dead onto what I guess, I mean, does that thing look like a tongue to you guys?
Yes.
Like, is it a face with a tongue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we get eaten by the temple. we go in.
We temple snakes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like gateways in this place that feel like should be leading to somewhere else, but they're all like physical gateways. None of them take you to like an ethereal other world or anything. Like, there's just a lot of places that have that designation, and this is like one of them. Using your sacred feet to cross the Valley of the Dead. Like, you don't see any dead in that valley. You just, it's like,
it's just a pit.
Right.
They're at the bottom chilling.
Right.
They're having a rave.
You can't go there.
This dungeon honestly was my favorite temple so far. Like, of all the temples, I just love the imagery. And I actually looked up online and found that these look very Roman inspired. If you look at like BC era Roman temples or French catacombs, especially the well-known French catacombs, if you go under France.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very inspired by those. If you look any of those up, anything very Western European. I tried to look up like Norwegian and like Finnish crypts because I thought that they kind of looked a little bit like Draugr crypts. But they don't at all. Like, the torture devices in this place with all the traps, like, think in a few rooms from this boat thing, we get to a room where like you have to use the lens of truth to like pull a block out of a wall and then like stop the blade traps from coming down.
Yeah, there's like these big spike hammers that look like meat tenderizers that just like smash the ground over and over.
Yeah.
And you have to like put a block under them.
And blade trap, that's a thing.
Blade traps are still all over the place here. But now there's like guillotine blade traps too. And I guess they're not really blade traps. You know, blade traps are the ones that are spiky and go shishing shishing. But
there's no ramp either.
Shishing.
There's big like scythe wielding spinning devices that just like call a whole room.
Where you had to get the silver rupees?
Yeah, either you gotta get the silver rupees or you just gotta use the lens of truth to even see the thing in a different room. Just some weird like physical obstacles to the point where there's more like traps and obstacles in this place than in like any other temple. Like, half the time you're not even fighting something, you're just like not getting hit by a big invisible sight that's like sweeping the room.
Yeah, I actually like wrote that down because I was like, you know, there's Stelphos here, there's Beamos, there's Keese, there's blade traps, there's a lot of enemies, but they're all enemies we've seen, we know how to deal with. I feel like you're more likely to die from the environment in this dungeon than like the enemies themselves, which is really sad.
Like, there's one room that has a few re-deads in it, but also it has like invisible blockades that look like, you know, they're straight up like just walls made of spikes that you can run into and impale yourself on. So that's fun.
Yeah, there's the room with just the invisible spikes on the floor. Where it's like, if you don't have your lens out, you're just running and all of a sudden, ow, ow. And you're like, what's going on? And you look and there's just like jagged gemstone, broken glass looking spikes on different parts of the floor. You're like, oh, that'd be nice to see.
Yeah, like whoever built this place was a jerk, honestly.
And there's even a part where there's a chest, and right next to the chest that has, like, garbage in it, I think it's like a blue rupee. If you use the Lens of Truth, there's another chest right next to it, and that one's got a small key in it.
Right. There's a few places where they do that, where they just, like, make a chest invisible. There was a couple places where they put a chest underneath a pile of, like, skulls and bones and stuff that you have to blow up.
Yo.
Some weird tricks played in this one. There's a whole section where you have to use your boots and swap them out so that when the fans are blowing, you have the iron boots on, but then also later you want to use the hover boots to kind of get sent into a path with one of the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, yo. I don't know what the fans have to do with anything, but there's a lot of stuff. Like there's paintings on the wall that talk to you everywhere. I didn't really mention that. They're usually on invisible walls, but also on just regular walls too. And they're the ones that like tell you things. Like there were a couple in the crypt right in the beginning, and one of them is the one that actually tells you about that like this is like the dark place. Like it's like it says here is gathered Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred. Which is like that big hint that people usually latch onto to figure out like what is this place that we're in. Like it's a crypt, but it's probably like if you look at all the torture devices and stuff like that, it seems like a dungeon too. There's jail cells. There's another one of those crucifix things that we saw in the bottom of the well somewhere in here.
Yeah, and there's blood all over the ground, and it's fantastic.
So it's too big of a place to have been like run by a singular jailer or anything like that. Like I really think that this was a Sheikah operation at some point. Which I don't love.
It was where they put the POWs.
Clearly the royal family had something to do with it. Given that, bottom of the well, you need the royal family thing to lower the water. And then like in the Shadow Temple, you needed the song. You need like Zelda's Lullaby to activate the boat later.
All right, so I got a theory here.
Okay.
So you ever look at the walls and notice that the skulls are kind of like too big to be like a human or Hylian skull, kind of? I don't know if you ever looked at the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that there was a war, right? Before all of this happened in Hyrule. And we know that the Zoras are there and they're fine. The Gorons, the Sworn Brothers, the king. So obviously they didn't fight. So you got to wonder, who did the Hylians fight, right? Like, who did they go to war with if all the other races are 100% okay, right?
Well,
so
okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so
we'll go with that for now.
Yeah. So we know that Ganon and the Gerudo are over in the desert and they're pretty secluded. And we do know that time and time again, Hyrule always fights moblins, right? And we've only ever seen, like 4 or 5 moblins yet as in this game. And they're like Ganondorf's main army, basically. Like that's his...
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the only...
grunt troops.
They're the only troops of Ganondorf's that we've seen in action for him and also wearing armor and carrying spears and stuff. So like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's leading me to believe that maybe, just possibly maybe, this underground dungeon was instrumented by the royal family and Sheikah during this war to torture moblins, and that is why there are no more moblins left except for that like rogue force in the forest.
What kind of information are you going to get out of a moblin though? Like they don't, as far as we know, they don't talk.
They go
they don't like I get what you're saying. This
their scream used to scare me when I was a kid.
Are you talking about the skulls on the paintings or the skulls that are like just lying around?
Just the ones that are against the walls, like as the background image itself.
Oh,
like they're too big ones, to be Hylians. Yeah,
huge. I don't know about that.
And it just makes me think like they're possibly bokoblins and moblins, and that's why Ganon's army's like no more, and he has to sort of do all of this by himself.
Yeah.
Because
I just always assumed that those skulls on the walls were just enlarged to show texture, like the cereal they put on the front of the cereal box, you know?
Possibly. It was the 90s.
So yeah, I mean between the catacombs and the torture devices and all of this stuff, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that's specifically more standout than the rest. I mean, I think we talked about the scythes and we talked about the guillotines, the cross, some of the other torture devices that we come across, but then we hit the boat, right? I mean,
The big boat.
the big boat to the other side.
Everyone saw it coming.
I didn't.
You didn't go down and see the boat before you went and saw the boat?
No, I mean, you just don't expect there to be a boat in the middle of the temple.
No, I was telling Cameron earlier that this has become my favorite temple in this playthrough. But before this temple, I told Cameron, if you were to point a gun at my head and say, name one room in the Shadow Temple that's not Bongo Bongo, I would have just been like, kill me. Because I didn't remember anything in this temple. This is the only temple. Like, I know rooms in the Spirit Temple. The whole shebang of Zelda. This temple, I somehow blocked it out of my memory, and I didn't remember any rooms in this temple. And now it's become one of my favorite temples in this game. So I don't know. I didn't remember any. I did not know there was a boat. Cameron last night was like, "Hey, there's a boat in this temple," and I'm like, "What do you mean there's a boat?"
Yeah, I think you asked me how far I was through, and I'm like, oh, I'm at the boat part. I'm pretty sure that's close to the end. And you're like, there's a boat? I'm like, yeah, there's a boat.
Yeah, I did not remember at all.
River Styxy. It's very like boat to the underworld. Like, what does this have?
And you're fighting Stelphos on the ride.
Yeah, you play the song, it activates, it starts taking you over to the other world, and Stelphos jump down and start fighting you. Which, if we know...
Yeah, and it's got this...
Like, Stelphos are Lost Woods creatures, right? So, like, they put them everywhere, so they're not really Lost Woods creatures anymore, but I don't know what other Stelphos are made from.
I think this lore of Stelphos is that you can become a Stelphos by being lost in the forest as like a curse maybe, but I think that it's just a restless soldier from like the Hylian Wars or something.
Sure, yeah, and we know that Ganondorf can like bring people back to life anyway, so like...
Yeah.
But there would be restless soldiers in this crypt according to what we've been discussing, so that makes sense too. Plus their skulls are big enough to be the skulls around the rooms.
Yeah, which is... Like, were Hylians bigger at one point in time? It's like, what the heck?
I don't know.
They juicing.
They used to be juicing.
They used to be juicing.
They were on that Goron regimen.
Is that dark history, man? Oh, jeez. Okay, well.
Wake up, eat, sleep, eat rock, go to bed.
Pretty much.
So we get this boat. I mean, the boat is supposed to lead to the other world, and like I've heard people theorize that it doesn't actually go to the other side until it falls through the fog, and you have to jump off of it. Which I guess makes sense because I mean the boat does sink. Or if they're trying to say, oh, now you're at the other like you're at the other world now, even though you just kind of went down a hallway. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is where you can go through that room that's like all invisible walls pretty much, except for the pillars at the ends of each corner and whatnot. There's like a whole room, and like the whole room is just filled with invisible walls and a few like floor masters.
Oh yeah. And then there's a room in each corner.
Yeah, and that's where you'll find your boss key, and like one of the rooms is just a bunch of rupees and
one of the rooms is 2 death traps made of wood that come in at you, and the only way to break them is 1-800.
Didn't fire.
Yeah.
It's funny because 1-800 Din's Fire has actually just one too many numbers to be a phone number.
I was thinking about it earlier.
1-800 Din Fire.
Din Fire. Use the Din Fire.
Use the Din Fire, boy. Fire?
So real quick side note before we progress further towards the boss room. We were talking about the boat, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of Cobleskill, New York at all.
Cobleskill?
Cobleskill. It's past Syracuse by 45 minutes. South of the Adirondack.
Okay. I believe
Okay,
you.
so it's a small town, like 1,000 to 2,000 population probably. Viewers definitely, check this place out. But there is a boat in this this place here that the boat will actually go along this river, and you're along this river, and you get off at this point where the boat docks, and there's a waterfall at the end. And mind you, you're underground in this cave that's like 600 to 700 feet below ground, and this waterfall just dips, and they've tried going down as far as they can, but they've actually run out of rope, and they've had to tie knots of rope. I think they said they went through like a sixth of a mile of rope before they felt unsafe that the rope was breaking. And then they had to pull the people back up, and they've never been down there, but they've coined it actually as just the hole to hell, basically, in this cave in Cobleskill, New York.
Is it actually pronounced Cobleskill or is it Cobleskill? I mean, there's only one B in it, right?
Cobble. It's Coble. So I don't say Cobleskill, I just say Coble because it's like Coble. And then skill.
Yeah, I just looked it up.
Yeah, it's called Howe's Caverns. So if you look up Howe's Caverns, it's a place. Yeah, and they have that boat ride. It just reminded me of when I was on this boat ride, like the River Styx type deal, and the boat sank. That like I was thinking if they didn't dock the boat at that dock, and you just like took the boat down that hole, like where do you go?
River Styx is in New York State, confirmed.
Yeah. Hades is gonna greet you at the bottom.
There's actually a hiking path. Because in Niagara River, there's a bunch of whirlpools, and there's actually one big famous one called Devil's Hole.
Oh, Devil's Hole.
So it seems like New Yorkers are really into this lore.
And then there's a place it's either Pennsylvania or Ohio, which is pretty close to New York, that's called the Devil's Tramping Ground.
Oh man.
And don't forget about the Eternal Flame over in Orchard Park area.
Right. Been there. That was a fun hike.
Yeah, I think New York is very familiar with the underworld. Although there is a place in Florida called Devil's Den.
I was gonna say, and the members of this podcast, now that we've given the plot that we're all New Yorkers of a kind.
What? No, come on. They think we're from Tennessee.
Do they know? All right, let's get back into the end area of this dungeon.
Yeah, so we get our boss key, and we go through one more room that's like entirely in shadow. And there's like invisible floors and stuff that we pretty much the whole room you navigate using the lens of truth. And your light boots.
And the hover boots.
Yeah, and the hover boots. Sorry, I called them the light boots. They're not the light boots. I don't know why I have that name stuck in my head, but that's never been a thing. Maybe it's because they glow with light when you're walking over air. But yeah, so you can get through the whole thing that way. There was one other thing I wanted to mention about this temple before we get to the boss that we just kind of skipped over, and it's like the huge room with a bunch of invisible platforms. This is like one that has like a line of like 3 guillotines you have to roll through, and then like there's just a bunch of invisible.
Oh, the giant open room.
Yeah, the giant open room that you get to like immediately after you enter the actual temple proper, I guess. And I don't know what the thought process was behind the design here. I don't know if it was because there's like prisons all around that this is like the way of making it high security, of like having this big like invisible floor. So like even if you were to get out of your cell, like you'd come out and be like, wait, I can't actually go anywhere. Or what it seems, but it does look like this whole temple. Like, I don't want to say it looks like it's been repurposed, but like the whole place looks blown out. Like it looks like there was a temple here, and now it's just a big cave. Like all the walls are kind of like dirt, I feel like, and it's not really a temple anymore. Now it's like a prison place. But I imagine it started out as a temple, right? I mean, I don't know.
Possibly.
Like maybe that's where the temple actually used to be for the most part, but again, I don't know.
I was definitely feeling some Greek vibes going on now that like you had mentioned the River of Styx, and the hover boots definitely have like a Hermes vibe going with the little wings on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all throughout this game,
The crypts themselves.
there's a lot of European references, obviously with like the castle town and everything. A lot of like Western European there. There's I'm pretty sure Link wears a Celtic tunic and like a it's called like a Phrygian cap, which is like a Greek thing that became a European thing after, ancient Greece stopped being the use of Europe, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of European, there's a lot of Greek, like ancient Greek references, and next episode I have even more to say on that. But there's also a lot of like Middle Eastern influence as well, and I mean, like there's a lot of cultures and stuff, like both from ancient history and from more recent history, I'll say, that kind of made its way into this game. I think it's really cool, some of the stuff they brought in.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Yeah. Sorry I interrupted your whole deal.
All right, any more rooms that stuck out to you guys in this last escapade of adventure?
I think I've shared everything about the rooms in the actual temple other than the boss room.
All right. Well, we get up past the the platforms that with the invisible gaps with the hover boots, and then we come up to the door with the boss key. We smack that open, and we get to a hole with a sort of skull cylinder room, and we take the hover boots off. We jump down that hole, and we come up to this what sort of looked like a flower in the beginning, and then we realize it's a giant drum. And two hands just start going boom, boom, boom. Or it's boop, boop, boom, boop, boop, boom. And every bounce on the left, I think it's the right hand, lifts Link in the air, and you're kind of sitting there probably like, what is going on? And he just starts getting faster and faster and faster at it until he comes off the ceiling with his little eyeball flower. And finally we see him, and he is the Phantom Shadow Beast. Bongo Bongo.
Yeah.
Makes himself presently
and
known.
Phantom and Shadow are like very closely related words. But I think that, a couple cool things to note. You can actually hear this guy playing the bongo all throughout the temple. They actually incorporated that rhythm that he plays for you right there, and the rhythm that he plays during the boss fight, into the actual music of the temple.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's cool. I mean, they do something very similar in Majora's Mask too, with some, like one of the bosses like has war cries, and you can hear them the whole time you're going through the temple as well. Like it's just details like that I find really just a really cool concept to kind of like hear what's coming before you get anywhere near it.
And have no idea that it's actually coming, because you don't realize that they would do that.
Right. So yeah, and the other thing is that this guy, this Bongo Bongo Shadow Phantom, right? I don't think it's okay, so it literally has beast in the name, right?
Yeah.
But its design is very clearly based off a human. In a way that's very disturbing, because I know like it's harder to see in the N64 and Virtual Console. In the 3DS version,
No, but I know where you're going with it.
it's very like obvious, like they gave it a back muscle structure, but
There's a spinal cord type deal.
there's the spinal cord. There's like
He's a vertebrae.
they gave it more of a head in the 3DS version, I feel like. Like in the Virtual Console, it almost looks like if this was a human, it would have been like cut off at the neck, and then instead there's just a flower thing there.
Yeah.
But in the 3DS version, they actually pretty much give it its entire skull, and then that skull is the eye. Like it looks like it's been scalped
just one
open.
giant eye on it.
And then the hands are separated from the body by more than just like the fact that it's an illusion. Like this whole boss disappears on you, and you have to use the Eye of Truth to see the main body. You can just see the hands.
Hands are like satellites.
Yeah. So I guess the thing I'll say is that it fits in with this temple, and also fits in with the bottom of the well, in a few ways. I mean, so severing hands has always been like the historic like punishment for a thief. But being scalped, I guess, because that's what it looks like at least in the 3DS version, it looks very much like this person's head was scalped open. Has been, and this is very graphic. Like, I'm gonna have to put some kind of warning on this episode, but but that's like a war thing to do. Like, that's very much like punishing like your enemies in war. It's been used by like several different cultures around the world in ancient history. I mean, I find that if I don't know that it's meant to be a humiliating thing or what, but it's very much like something that you do to a prisoner of war, or like someone who, even just on the battlefield, like people will like collect scalps from their victims or whatever. Like, it's like an intimidation thing, So yeah, so this character, this Bongo seems to be, I don't want to try to peg them as like this was some kind of like singular thief or character from the past. I think that this is like, it's a shadow phantom beast. So I think that the imagery here is meant to mean like this is kind of a culmination of this dark past. Like, this is like people who were punished or defeated in war. Like all of that dark spirit, all of that dark energy, whatever, like from these cruel and unusual punishments kind of coming together to make Bongo a thing, I don't know why he plays the drums. I feel like that's very much like a telltale heart kind of thing. Again, like we're uncovering the truth of the past, and that's what the telltale heart story is about. Like, it can like the murderer in that story can like hear the heartbeat through the floorboards, So it's not a heartbeat, but it's very clearly like he's signaling out what's happened, What did you guys think of the boss though?
It was actually a relatively annoying fight for me. I went at like half health when I went in, got knocked all the way down, had to use my fairy, and then probably lost about 3 or 4 hearts after being fully revived. Which is pretty bad for me.
I watched a YouTube video before I played him on the best strategy to beat him. And basically, you just shoot his either hand with an arrow as quick as you can in the beginning of the fight, and then wait for him to like launch at you. Mm-hmm. And as close as he gets to launch at you, you're going to want the Lens of Truth probably, because otherwise you just have to do a guessing game when he's launching at you with his hands. But yeah, you just either do a spin attack or launch another arrow at him and just repeat the process. I think like after every time you smack the crap out of him, he's going to like kind of shoot his hands out like a rocket. And then you just keep repeating and rinsing that tactic until he's dead. So it's not like too bad if you can control him. But if you can't control him, he could be a nuisance.
Yeah, the fight is actually kind of like built along the same rhythm that he's playing on the drum, which is a weird way to look at it. But basically it's hand, face, right? Like, so you shoot one hand, you want to immediately shoot the other as fast as you can, because it like once one is stunned, the other one will immediately kind of go into an attack. But if you shoot them both before they get to you, then you've passed that first stage. Then both of his hands will become fists, and he'll kind of like come down to the drum and sweep towards you. And that's when you want to have the Lens of Truth on, because then you can lock onto his face and shoot him anywhere in his path. As long as he's down at the drum, he'll get stunned, and you can run up and get some hits in, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat. As far as I know, he doesn't really get much harder as the fight goes on, but if you're struggling with like shooting the hands or anything like that, he's got some pretty nasty moves where he'll grab you and throw you out into the acid, or just like beat up on you real like in brutal ways. So you really want to, you just want to shoot him as fast as you can, really.
Yeah. The more you let him do, the worse time you're going to have.
Yeah.
So I have sort of a possible origin of what Bongo is that I was thinking.
Okay.
We know of the guy telling us about the man in the well, right? That he had a particular way of doing things, and he trained his mind's eye to see the truth, right? And his house stood where the well is now. Now, basically, we see that Bongo Bongo has one eye. It's a very different eye than every other eye in the whole world we've seen. And it's possible that Bongo Bongo is the man who had lived where the well stood. And that's why he was in there. And he escaped. He maybe once was a Sheikah with the way, you know how the Mask of Truth and all the Sheikah basically statues are all that one eye, the true eye, basically, the eye of truth. Mm-hmm. We could kind of think that Bongo Bongo's eye could possibly be like, maybe Bongo Bongo knows the truth. Maybe he's not necessarily like a bad thing. Maybe the Sheikah and Hyrule were trying to cover up this man. Maybe he wasn't a Sheikah, but maybe they were trying to cover this man up from existence because maybe he knew too much, because he did train his mind and his eye to figure out the truth, and they were like, well, we can't have that, so let's trap you in this well. And now he's just, because, you know, they tortured him, they trapped him, all that other stuff. So I don't know. And then once Ganondorf became king, obviously he frees Bongo Bongo and is like, hey, you work for me now. And Bongo's like, cool, let me go kill all the Sheikahs. That's my theory, but I don't know. It's either that he maybe might be that man, or it's just another beast of Ganon's creation. Either one. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense either way. Like, I feel like if Ganondorf has a play in this one, because, you know, he usually has some kind of plan with the things that he does. Like, he's very directly involved with, obviously, his own Shadow Ganon. He was involved with bringing Volvagia back from the dead to eat the Gorons. He froze over, you know, Zora's domain. And I don't know if he created Morpha or put Morpha there. Like, there really isn't a story around Morpha that's given to you, other than that's the source of the ice somehow. And then so this one, again, like, they don't say, oh, Ganondorf released this monster or is doing this thing in Kakariko. It's just like, you show up and the world's on fire and you're like going after the Shadow Beast. So I don't know how to explain what Ganondorf's play. I mean, if anything, I think maybe he's trying to exploit the Sheikah's dark past to basically be like, who are you to judge me? Like, who are you to say that I'm this evil king when clearly you guys have this whole history of injustice and, well, you know, justice without truth, like we were saying before, which would be injustice. But like, you have this dark, bloody history. Like there's evil everywhere. It's not just me. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think he's trying to like be defensive like that, but I think maybe he's trying to use that to like shake the confidence of the people, you know, like this is the world that was destroyed. It really wasn't anything anyway. Like, you know, you guys should just be willing to kind of accept this new order. You know? Yeah, no, I feel that.
I feel like we don't get the story to Bongo Bongo.
We don't.
I think the way that they tell it, he's been sealed away already. He's just this evil force. And I think, yeah, Ganondorf lets him out because he likes chaos. He wants everything to be destroyed. And I don't know, maybe just the negativity of the Shadow Temple is what drew Bongo Bongo like to go in there in the first place, and that's when Impa tried to run in and do her thing and seal him.
That's the thing that it makes me wonder, though, you know, like, if he, like, why would he run to the Shadow Temple that has a perfectly placed drum ready for him to, like, live his life by, you know? And it's like, I just can't help but think that the man that we talked to says the man in this very village who had an eye that could see the truth. Not like eyes, but an eye. One eye, which is what Bongo Bongo has. So I just like, I don't know, I want to correlate the two.
Well, the lens of truth also looks like an eye, so you could call that an eye.
Right, like it could have just been the lens, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It could have been he had a physical lens.
I mean, they obviously very well could be talking about the lens of truth, but
Yeah, they
I don't know.
they don't give you a huge story. I mean, even the story itself is broken. I mean, if you talk to you know that dude who's in Impa's house and is like, you're rude for coming into a house that's not yours or whatever. When you go back as an adult to Kakariko, if you go and talk to that guy, he like even before you've done any other temple, like if you were to just become an adult, go straight to Kakariko, talk to this man, he'll give you some trouble for walking into a house that's not yours again, and then he'll be like, oh, whatever, it's not my house anyway, it's Impa's. She went to the Shadow Temple to try to seal up Bongo Bongo. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I don't think he actually names Bongo Bongo, but he basically says that Impa went to the Shadow Temple to deal with something way before the rest of the story agrees with that. Because she's not supposed to go there until Bongo Bongo is already gone there. So
Yeah.
it's just funny. When I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. I don't think you're supposed to say that yet, sir.
Yeah, the game definitely had incorrect speech patterns.
They missed a dialogue option for that guy before the Shadow Temple stuff.
They should have triggered it the first time that you return to a kid as after being an adult.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that's why, I mean, that's why this whole chapter is like super obscure to me. Like, I feel like they were gonna tell some kind of story with this chapter that ended up getting scrapped or left on the drawing table.
Well, yeah, because like they were gonna connect everything in the OG version, and it sort of reminds me of that man that we talked about before we became an adult, who was in the middle of an alley dying, saying there was this huge battle, and then like you go out and there's never a battle because they scrapped the whole scene. It's like, I think they took stuff out and then never went through it again to make sure that it made sense, and then we're just left with the final product, which isn't bad. It's just there's nothing there.
It's dark, it's fun, it's, you know, it seems really heavy, and I for the most part I enjoy it, even though it's kind of like, you know, one of the horror dungeons, but it, you know, it's I love it.
So yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
I think it's a fun dungeon.
Like,
it's my favorite.
That's why
I think, so
the
far.
entire storytelling that we've been kind of tuning into has suddenly become guesswork because there's just not enough information here. But at the same time, like, I do like looking into it and thinking about, okay, what could this mean? And, you know, where do I think this fits into the rest of the story? And it's, you know, in some cases you might take the stance of, no, the Sheikah were never evil. Like, something else was using this dungeon for all these purposes, and the Sheikah cleared it, or, you know, whatever. Like, I mean, you could make that argument just as easy because there's no real evidence of who was doing what, you know?
Yeah, if it was Hyruleans or Sheikah or who was it?
It just seems like a really evocative story to me to see it that way, to see the Sheikah as having this dark past, as serving the royal family, and that's where this comes from. Like, that to me is an engaging and like sophisticated story. And so that's kind of what I go with when I think about this. And I don't like seeing Impa in that light, but at the same time, it's like, she's not like that. She's not going around administering justice where no justice is needed. Like, she's if anything, like, she doesn't follow that pattern at all. Like, maybe that's what the Sheikah used to be, but now she's trying to actually bring it back to what they were supposed to be, you know?
If you think about it, you know, we only really know so far of 2 Sheikah that are technically still remaining, you know?
Yeah.
So we have Sheik and Impa. So maybe there was an end put to the Sheikah that we don't know about yet. And
the Yiga.
The Yiga.
I'm sorry.
And on that note, we beat Bongo Bongo, and he turns into dust, and we get a heart piece.
And then he evaporates.
We then transport ourselves to the what's it called?
The Chamber of Sages.
Yeah.
Where we actually see Impa again for the first time in a long time.
And we use Din's fire.
No. And she basically just, you know, does another one of those, like, good job. I knew you had it in you. You're really becoming a hero, you know. I'm going to give you this. Like, I think that, you know, Impa tells you to take care of it. Like, he basically, you will run into Zelda at some point soon. She's still alive, which is kind of a cool reveal. So take care of that. Yeah, and then basically says like, I'm going to give you this medallion. I'm sure my power will be useful to you, basically. So yeah, she goes through that. Impa is like, we've gone through all these other relationships that we have with these characters. We have, best friends, and then we have brothers, and then we have our spouse. And Impa is kind of like a comrade, I guess. Like she's there, like she's loyal to the family. She's on the same team as you. Like you guys are kind of, not how to say brothers in arms, but like, like you're all on the same team. You're on the same mission. So her whole deal, like her relationship to you and to Zelda is defined by loyalty. Like almost like unquestioning loyalty, because I don't know entirely what why she's like that with you too, but like that's what your relationship looks like. Like she's not really there to be like this kind-hearted whatever person. Like no, like your relationship is defined by your mission, and she's loyal to that mission. So it's another facet of relationships. I mean, that's more like if you had a teammate that you weren't really friends with off the team, like you still have that understanding of one another and can still read each other on a field, I think that's what they were going for with her. But yeah, that's kind of the end of this chapter, is after we talk to her, get the reveal that we will soon see Zelda.
One thing I wanted to bring up that I don't know if we mentioned earlier. Did you guys know the well is actually called the Well of Three Features?
I did. And if you read the sign, the three features are like, I don't even remember what it says, like dark, deep, and scary or something like that.
Yeah. No, dark, narrow, and scary.
Dark, narrow, and scary. The Well of Three Features.
And I thought it was hilarious.
I think that's hilarious too. I think it's funny that the Kakariko literally have a sign that says that. Dark, narrow, and scary well.
You don't want to go down there.
And little do they know there's actually like 12 features.
Yeah.
There's a water feature. It's pretty great.
There's a giant flying skull that's on fire sometimes.
And some hands.
Torture device and some prison cells.
And a couple dead bodies just laying around, chained up.
A couple. Just a couple. What do you mean by a couple? Like piles of bones. Every other room.
Fresh blood around the room.
Okay. Sorry, a couple that were still talking to me. Many, many more that weren't talking to me. Like, wait.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much ready to wrap it up then.
I would agree.
All right. So yeah, this has been our episode of A for No, B for Yes. If you have anything to add, you have any other speculation that you think that this chapter is about, or this temple is about, or what have you, write into us. Give us your arguments. Give us your reasonings. Honestly, this is one of the most open-ended episodes I think we've had, and I'm not sure that we really served you that well. But you know what? Write to us anyway. A4NB4Y @gmail.com. Any of our regular links, they'll all be in the description. So, yeah, I hope to hear from you soon, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Did you get all that?
Roof.
Bork.
Woof. Woof. Woof.
So much woof.
Shut